I just 100%ed Pikmin 4, almost. I'm not gonna, like, say that I 100%ed it, because I did not get Platinum on the Capture the Purple Jewel, and there's no way I'm gonna, like, go back to do that. But functionally, I played everything, and I got Platinum on everything, except for that, specific thing, so I'm just gonna, I feel like I've experienced enough of the game to give some of my, my thoughts on it. First of all, it was a pretty long game. It probably took me a week or two of frequent play. I guess, well, I can check the amount of hours. So, first of all, it's a pretty, beefy game. It's pretty long. My Switch tells me that I played it more than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which says 30 hours. And why it's not telling me how long I played Pikmin 4, I don't know. But more than 30 hours, which is solid, especially considering that I kind of, feel like I flew through it, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But if I'm just looking at the game, purely, from an outside perspective, the amount of polish on everything is insane. It looks great. It's probably the best that anything on the Switch has looked from what I've seen. It definitely, and I'm gonna get some crap for this, but it definitely looks better than Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And I take that how you will, but it just, in my opinion, does. The visual style is so much more polished and charming than anything else I've seen on the Switch, and everything just looks the way it should. In terms of designs of enemies and stuff like that, visually again, everything holds up really well. There were a couple design changes from previous games in terms of some bosses and enemies that just had slight changes, and none of that really bothered me. A lot of people are upset about the flower enemy, and I just do not care enough about this video. It's just a video game. It sounds great. Also, music is solid. Sound effects are mostly the same they've always been. No complaints there. In terms of the controls, which I think is one of the bigger changes from previous games to this game, is the way that it controlled. I don't mind the lock-on, but I wish that there was a way to make it not happen. In some sort of setting where you can just flick off and say, hey, I'm not gonna lock on enemies, I would rather control the game with motion controls, or, just joystick, however you want to do it. And I think not only would that kind of open up a harder difficulty, which again, I'm kind of dancing around that, but I'll come back to the difficulty later, but it would also just kind of get rid of some of the problems, because there were a lot of problems with the lock-on. Not a lot. It was more helpful than it was hurtful, but there were quite a bit of moments, especially in some of the later parts of the game, where there's the sticky mold, the little mushroom caps. The further into the game you get, the more of those there are, and you will never be able to effectively lock onto them. And especially if there's treasure nearby, it just is a no-go sometimes. But overall, and I guess I can use this to transition into the difficulty, the lock-on is definitely one of the things that makes the game easier. Previous games, killing even just a dwarf bulborb, you had to back up, you had to make sure you stayed far enough away to not alert it and get it to walk towards you, because if it starts walking towards you, you're basically just chucking Pikmin as fast as you can. But, even something as simple as killing that, which can be done in one shot just could be hard, and it made you feel, it was very rewarding when at the end of the game you could just walk by and you have mastered the controls and you can just kill those enemies in one tap. And especially some of the bigger enemies, like the, I don't know, the big ones, like, they've gone by many names, but the spotty bulbors, the red ones, if you did not have a really good, efficient setup, you could lose a lot of Pikmin really fast. And the lock-on feature has not only made it so that you can pretty much just kill almost every weak enemy in one hit, but Ochi kind of breaks the game. Being able to, like, charge and stun enemies very early on, and these are things you have to unlock, but you can unlock them very quickly if you want to. Being able to do this basically makes any non-boss enemy just a trivial obstacle that's only really going to kill a Pikmin if you either make a major mess up or if you just don't notice it when you're sending Pikmin to carry treasure back. And I think that is a problem, because if your only challenging enemy is a boss, then you kind of just, it's not like a very fun, like, there's no point in having the enemies there other than to waste your time. And another thing that kind of makes the game very easy very early is Ice Pikmin. Almost every early game enemy, like up until halfway through the game, if you have some Ice Pikmin, some regular Pikmin, you hop on Ochi, you can kill pretty much anything in one, I don't want to say one hit, but one charge of Ochi without giving the enemy any chance to attack. And that, even bosses, and that is kind of just an issue. It makes the game really easy, and I know, like, games are for small children, but, like, Pikmin is not exactly known, like, previous Pikmin games have been notoriously hard and finicky and just really weird to master. And to get to a point where you can play a game like Pikmin 2 without losing any Pikmin, or even just not having to restart your console due to, like, a major extinction, takes a lot of time and practice, and you have to be really familiar with the game. And even going from Pikmin 1 to Pikmin 2 when I was replaying them just is hard. Like, they control differently in their own separate ways. It makes them hard to go from game to game. It makes it even more difficult. And then coming into Pikmin 4, especially, like, small, but, I was really expecting the game to ramp up after you, and it just really did. It just didn't. And then after that, I was like, oh, after you do this objective, it's gonna, like, I just thought there would be some kind of post-game, like in Pikmin 2. In Pikmin 2, after you cure the debt, you can get the debt is very easy to, like, that's not the hard part of the game. The hard part of the game is those final few Ks, everything that happens after you've gotten the debt, and I thought there would be a moment like that in this game, and it just doesn't happen. But you may have remembered that I said first, like, half the game, like, the early game, almost every enemy can be defeated with Ice Pikmin and Ochi, and you may be saying, what about the late game? Well, that is the part where you unlock Purple Pikmin, and that is kind of, this has been a problem for almost 20 years now, since the Pikmin 2 released. So Nintendo has had 2 decades to figure out how to make Purple Pikmin not break the game. And I would argue that they are more overpowered in this game than they were in Pikmin 2. Because at least in Pikmin 2, there were bosses and caves where you simply did not have Purple Pikmin at your disposal. And this is not really the case. As soon as you unlock more than 15 Purple Pikmin, and especially once you unlock the Purple Onion, which I wish I had not done. Well, I just wish you did not have access to it as early, I guess. But as soon as you do that, the game is trivial. Any boss can be defeated by hurling purple Pikmin on it, and you know, some level of whistle control. You're not gonna be one-cycling things like you would if you use Ice Pikmin. But if you have, like, Ochi, and you have some kind of basic Pikmin, like, basic Dandori skills, you can just throw purple Pikmin, and then it takes off anywhere from a quarter to 3/4 of its health, and then you wait for it to do its little attack, and then you do that again, and then you win. And that's, I'm talking about bosses. The enemies are just, by the time you get to that point in the game, Ochi can solo enemies even if you're not controlling them. But really, just to see like these massive bosses like the Man at Legs and Bullblacks from previous games be just demolished by purple Pikmin is just like weird to see, because you can one-cycle Bullblacks if you have 20 purple Pikmin, a spicy spray, and a bomb rock. You can one-cycle Bullblacks, who was the final boss of the first game. And Man at Legs, even in the final cave, which, the Home of Heroes or whatever, I only brought purple Pikmin into that. I brought 100 purple Pikmin into the final cave, and I left with around 80. And there were elemental obstacles. There was, like, almost half the floors had the bosses in the water. And you could still kill them with purple Pikmin, because you throw all your Pikmin, and they attack, and then when they fall off, you just swim around and they just hop onto Ochi without even really having to whistle them, and then you can just do that over and over again, and it gives you so much nectar that this isn't, like, it's just a problem. And I think if the game were harder, it would be just so much better, or even if there was some way to make it harder, I would just enjoy it a lot more. But back to, like, things I liked. I also loved the side missions, and that was something that I was not expecting to love, because, you know, like, the challenge and the co-op and the bingo are all fun, but this game really makes the side missions part of the main game and unlocking all this story stuff. And the Dandori battles and challenges and the night mode is just, like, they were really solid. They were really good challenges, and I was so motivated internally. Like, the game did such a good job at encouraging you to beat your high score and not stop restarting until you got platinum, that I just really enjoyed that. I will say, I think those modes are very well balanced, because they're almost never based on defeating enemies. It's just... And then also, you know, the hardest side mode, like the hardest of each thing, the hardest night mode where you go against the Smoky Prog and the Daddy Longlegs in the final area of the game is very challenging to kill especially if you're trying to kill every enemy to get that 100%. And the final Dandori battle and challenge aren't too difficult, but especially the cave that's in the hub world, all the trials at the Sage Leaf, I think it's called, to get the purple onion, that final floor is very hard, and I love it. It's great. It's really fun. I love hard games, you know? Cuphead's great, Pikmin 2 and 1 are great, and this game, I don't know. I mean, there are other hard games, that's just the ones that came to mind, but I just wish this game was just difficult enough to warrant being called Pikmin. And I know that's a tall ask, but even if it were not as difficult, but it were balanced, that would be a little different, you know. But you can pretty much fly through this game with 2 or 3 types of Pikmin. And I don't want to make it seem like I have negative thoughts, so I'm going to say some more good stuff. It was just a fun game. All the enemy design, I really loved all the different worlds. There was lots of different, you know, stuff. Would recommend. I give it like an 8 out of 10. It would have been a 9 or 10 out of 10 if it were harder, but I still prefer Pikmin 1. I would just much rather go back and replay Pikmin 1 than replay Pikmin 4, and that's for a couple of reasons. Mostly, it's harder, it's a little more challenging, there's a little more long-term motivation to do things quickly and beat your high score in terms of number of days. It's a pretty short game, so that is like a good motivation, but I'm starting to ramble. That's my thought about Pikmin 4. I give it 8 out of 10, or, if you'd rather, 1 thumbs up and 1 big cheeser. Later.